Hey, what is up, everybody? Beautiful recruiters out there, and even you not so beautiful recruiters. This is David Stephen Patterson. You know me as DSP, and of course, we have my brothers from other mothers. We have Mr. Chris Wessel, the face, if you will, the hunky fella, and then over here we have we'll call that the boss. That'd be Neil Lebovitz over here.
The brain, not the face.
Welcome, guys. Today we're going to be talking about mindset, specifically recruiter resilience in the face of a recession. A really important topic. I think you guys are going to love it. It's going to be fantastic. Guys, do me a favor before we get into it. If you're watching live, comment live down below. If you're watching the replay later, comment replay. Make sure as well, please share it. Please like and love it or hate it, whatever. Just show some emotion, right? The little button right there. If every one of you shared it, we'd be a huge show. So that said, we're going to get into it in a few minutes. But first, I want to say hi to my lovely co-hosts, Neil and Chris. Right before the call, Neil was giving Chris a bit of a tongue lashing. I like to use that word.
Thanks for the visual. It's better over video than it is in person. I'll give you that much. So I guess it depends on how you look at it. I was late to our pre-show green room conversation, and they were chastising me for strolling in at the last minute.
Well, we get in like 15, 20 minutes early into the green room. And what we were saying is we made you, Chris Wessel. You were nothing before the show before we invited you on. And now literally we're now introducing you to literally tens of viewers.
You are responsible for both of the followers I picked up in the last couple of weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I don't even know if I could quantify the value. It's incalculable.
I just love any opportunity to say the word tongue lashing.
That's pretty much
it's such a visual. It's such a great visual.
It is a great one, actually.
Well, I wanted to talk about mindset, and it's something that I think is not talked about more in our business. As a recruiter, we have to be, we've got to be in sales. We got to be recruiting. We have to be a project manager. We have to be a CEO. We have to. We're the chief bottle washer. So we're all these things trying to run this practice in an economy where hiring is slowing, and it's kind of rough. And so I know for a lot of folks, mindset's a big issue. In fact, we had the idea for the topic of the show because once in a while I send out these emails to my email list where I go into maybe some dark places where I talk about mindset and what I like to call the crucible. And I sent one out last night, and it's funny. I just mentioned this to Chris and Neil earlier that those emails are typically my most unsubscribed emails, but also by far my most responded to. I get a lot of people that respond back and say, hey, this really resonated, really struck a chord. Thank you so much. And of course, a lot of people unsubscribe. Do with that information what you will. But I do find it interesting that is the case. But I think it's a great topic for its sake. I know a lot of people are struggling with that right now, or if they're not yet, they probably will be, because we all struggle with minds. Oh yeah. Well, let me ask you, either you, Chris or Neil, do you guys struggle with that? Like, I know I do for sure, but do you guys struggle with mindset?
I think that it's interesting the path a lot of us have chosen in terms of like what makes up a lot of this group, which is mostly solo recruiters, a lot of them working from their house. It's a solitary job. It sounds a little crazy because you're like, well, you talk to people all day long. You talk to clients, you talk to candidates. Like, you could never be like lonely. You're not, there's no lack of people to talk to, but it can be very solitary in the sense that you're running business by yourself. You're kind of in your own echo chamber. You can get in your own head, and when things are going great, that's awesome. But if you get a few too many, one of the things I used to tell my recruiters who work for me, like, more things go right today than wrong. We had a good day, but sometimes we have more things go wrong than right, and sometimes we have that happen for a little bit, and we have a little bit of a slump, and it's tough to get out of your own head sometimes. So no matter who you are, I think and even if somebody says they don't, you still have those feelings. Some of us have maybe learned how to cope with it better, which is one of the things we're talking about today. Yeah. But yeah, it's very real.
Yeah. And listen, it's real for me. It's real for everybody. And it's the same as social media and the images people have, right? So everyone's stressed. Everyone has their obstacles, and everyone feels things going on. To answer your question, yeah, it's a real thing, David. I've had dark times, when things have appeared to just, they build up, like Chris said. Yeah. So what I think it's healthy. Okay. It's good to be a little scared. If you act on it, okay, you need to do something different. That's what it's telling you. Do the same thing over and over, you get the same results. So for me, when I was in my mindset that I need the biggest push, I would immerse myself in whatever it was, just immerse, right? And sell yourself out of it. I remember early on, that was it. You could sell yourself out of it, right? Sell yourself out of it. What does that mean for you? So yeah, very much so. I think everybody.
Well, it's the way to look at it. And so I will say this. I think one of the first things you have to realize is that you can't stick your head in the sand. So it's I do find it funny, and maybe other people may disagree with me here on the show, but for me personally, when I speak to people and somebody says, well, I don't, there is no recession, I don't believe in it. I'm like, oh, okay. But it's kind of like it's kind of like if you're really fat and saying, hey, I'm healthy, okay, it's great until diabetes catches up to you. And so I'd rather, realize what's going on and recognize it and know how to deal with it. You don't have to participate in the recession. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but you don't have to participate in it. However, it's good to at least know what's going on, know the environment, even if you're in a really hot section, just because things are going to get a little bit funky over the next year. However, the way I look at it, and we'll talk about some specific strategies, by the way, and tactics that I use, and of course, Neil and Chris are going to as well. But I think it's important to realize overall, think of this as a crucible, where this is, as they say, true character comes out when faced with adversity, right? That's when you can see someone's true character come out. What are they really made out of? In a lot of ways, it's the adversity that really creates us. I think some of the biggest things that I've gone through in my life, whether it be recession or whatever it is, have helped define me in my life. I have a speech impediment. I've had a speech impediment now since I was born. I've got apraxia, and because of that, I've had to. But that in a lot of ways has shaped me in my efforts to be able to speak normally and fluidly and actually get rid of social anxiety. Kind of forced me into seeking a path where I had to work on that recruiting, right? And in this business,
and to become a trainer, right? Talk about immersing yourself or whatever. To overcome that, you need that skill. So, right, speaking is your livelihood now, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. It is, and it forces you to take action. It's the same reason why if someone's afraid of making business development calls, one of the best ways to get around that is start making business development calls. Is to embrace the obstacle in front of you. In fact, a great book I would pick up, which I think would be really valuable for anybody watching this who maybe struggles with some of their mindset, is to pick up a couple of books specifically on the concept of stoicism. The first one is, and my favorite is the War of Art.
Of books on stoicism. That's a great word, right? But I can't believe there's books on it, let alone more than one. I'm sorry to cut you off.
It's a whole movement. There's a ton of stuff, actually. Yeah.
Wow.
There's a great book by Ryan Holiday called "The Obstacle Is the Way," which is a really, really great book to read. And my favorite would be Stephen Pressfield's book, "The War of Art," not the Art of War. That's the famous Sun Tzu book. It's about the War of Art.
David, you've mentioned that a few times, right? I'm going to get that. You mentioned that, and it's applicable, it seems, to a lot of situations. And I love the play on it.
Well, let's talk about that. Chris, I think you've read that, haven't you? I believe you didn't.
I have not, actually. So now that's something that I got to check out.
Great things, David, but you brought it up in many situations, So I'm going to get it.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite book of all time.
Is it? Wow.
Yeah, and I've read it a ton. So I'll give you a quick recap, because I think for anybody listening to this, whether or not you read the book, the principles are timeless. So one of the big things that gets people down is this negative spiral of despair. So, for example, you're depressed, or you are frustrated, or you're scared because you don't have enough business coming in, or not enough things are happening on your desk. And so what happens is it's very easy to escape. What happens is during this time, you tend to hit the snooze button more often, because being in bed warm is a safe place, and your reptile brain wants to be in a safe place. So you hit the snooze button more often. Maybe you quit working out. You don't really get the work done. You spend too much time on Facebook, LinkedIn, I call it dur scrolling, where you've got your Facebook up and you're basically like dur scrolling. That's all it is.
That sounds better than doom scrolling. I like that better.
Yeah, doom scrolling too, but I like dur scrolling. So you're during all over the place. And so and what happens is because you're not getting the work done, because you're not seeing enough success, and you engage in these behaviors that don't propel you anywhere, that don't get you to where you need to be, and then you get more depressed, and then so you're more likely to hit the snooze button, more likely to be on. It's just spiral, and so you need a positive spiral of success in order to break out of that. And so in the War of Art, it's a short book. It's written by a guy who's one of the most famous authors when it comes to things like. Oh yeah, it's a great book. He's a famous author. He writes a lot of nonfiction book or lots of fiction books as well, specifically around basically fiction around the times of ancient Greece. That's kind of his specialty, and a lot of nonfiction books. But the book is about how to defeat what's called resistance. And resistance, for anybody listening to this, we all have resistance. Resistance is just the universal force that keeps you from being your higher self. So what does that mean? Well, when you wake up in the morning, you hit the snooze button. That's resistance. When you don't want to make that next call, that's resistance. We don't want to write that piece of content. That's resistance. We don't submit the candidates. You don't want to type up the candidate submittal because it's a pain in the ass. That's resistance. When you eat ice cream at 11 o'clock at night, you know it's going to make you gain weight. It's resistance. When you drink a 6-pack on a Wednesday, knowing that you're not going to be your best on Thursday, that is resistance. And so all resistance basically is in essence is that force that keeps you from what you should be doing. And oftentimes it's the direction where you feel the most resistance is actually where you need to go. It can be a true north, if you will. I won't get into the specific techniques that he uses to beat that resistance. Just know that it's something that you face every day. But pick up the book. You can finish it in a few hours. It's really short. It's really impactful. But it's very much the kind of book that will grab you by the throat and show you what you need to do. And if you just make the decision to follow some of the practices that he has in that book, it might be one of the most impactful things you can do for your mindset, because you can meditate and all that, and that's great. But one of the best feelings for any of us is the feel that we're moving forward in our business, in our life, in our personal life, in our health, in our relationships, or whatever it is. And so if you keep your business moving and find ways to eliminate those distractions, beat resistance, so you can see you're getting success in your business. Well, if you're successful in your business and your practice, then your health will probably be better, right? You'll be more motivated to do these things that are healthy and not drink. Your relationships will be better. Your life will be better. And so I think a lot of it comes down to finding ways to make sure you get your work right, and go read the book. It's an amazing book. I can't do it justice, but it's one of the most important books I've ever read.
I think you have. So many of the resistance things you mentioned, I hear fear, right? That's what I'm on. So people are scared, and it's really age-old wisdom too. In a recession or slowdown, or when you get like that, it really puts a spotlight on your weaknesses. It does. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing. If you said, David, it makes you, but you now need to look at yourself. You need to look yourself in the mirror, and you need to do things differently. And there's fear, and there's scared, and there's debilitation, there's resistance. And I think I think everyone can relate.
I think that it's funny about talking about like kind of how adversity shapes you, right, and the ups and downs. And certainly some of us who have been in business as long as like 3 of us or more. I mean, I've been through 3 recessions personally, from a professional standpoint, more of them prior to working. But now, after a while, you kind of learn that they're cyclical. So I think one thing that happens as adversity comes and goes is you start to learn how to cope with it, because you just kind of learn to kind of expect it, and it's a thing, and it's a cycle. And knowing that there's an end to it is helpful. But I mean, I bought my first rental property at the end of '08, which is not the best time to buy a rental property. I was upside down on it almost immediately, right? I started my first firm in 2009, also excellent timing. So I am a glutton for punishment. I started, but I kept going with both things, right? And it included, like, when you're talking about like personal habits too, like I found that if you control what you can control, right? Like you can't control the circumstances around you, but you can control, how you act. You can control, like, can't control whether companies are going to say yes or no to you, but you can control how many of them you reach out to. You can control that, like, maybe if your previous version type of outreach that used to work for you isn't working, maybe you need to try different things. Maybe you find a couple things are working and you double down on those. But the personal aspects were big for me. I had a point, my first firm a couple of years in, where when I started hiring a bunch of employees, I didn't have this happen to me before because it was just my partner and I were just doing our thing, closing deals. But then when I started to have 3-4 recruiters working for me, some of whom had kids and families and stuff and were carrying their insurance, and I had like anxiety attacks and like panic attacks because I was like, holy shit, I'm responsible for all of this. I got pretty depressed for a bit because I was like, I had that downward spiral David's talking about, where I stopped like eating right. I would, have a drink. I'd sometimes worse yet, like you're not even sure what to do. So then you just like go to a bar for the afternoon because you're like, I don't know what to figure out. What's that?
Fear. It's all just. I'm sorry. It's resonating with what you're saying, and I remember the first. I'm going to shut up. Fear, false evidence appearing real. Remember that acronym?
Yeah.
Exactly,
and then so and so. And like I'm no different than any other human being out there. We double down on like the bad thoughts, and then we do the destructive behaviors like DSP was talking about, which is I completely lived through that. And one of the things that pulled me out of that, because how you gotta, you said you gotta feel forward progress to get out of it. I couldn't control some things, but what I did focus on was like, okay, I'm gonna exercise. I'm gonna get back to that. I'm not gonna miss a day. I'm gonna cut out the garbage. I'm going to eat better, not perfect, but better. I was eating bad, right? And drinking too much and all this other stuff. I'm focusing. I don't care if I have no appointments that day or anything. I'm still getting up at the same early hour. I'm getting my workout in, and I'm at my desk at 8:00. Even if because you could easily fall in the trap of, I don't have anything in my pipeline. I'll just sleep in, and maybe I'll make some calls later. Like I found routine personally or business wise helped me like dig out of a hole, if that makes sense.
Listen, therapists, and I've had therapy a decent amount of my life. That's so huge, Chris. And so you got to do something different, though. Break your pattern, right? It's so huge. That's huge. I have adopted that ages ago. I get up, change, cologne if I'm alone, right? It's so huge.
Mm-hmm. That mindset, it's a big factor. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Chris. So I want to riff a bit off what you said. So having a schedule, waking up early, whatnot. So one of the best things you can do to for your mindset, I think, is in terms of your daily routine. And so I'll start there. So as you said, having something a little more regimented is helpful. If you could work out in the morning, I know sometimes it's not possible with kids or whatnot, but if you could work out in the morning. It's obviously a big one, but even beyond that, let me walk you through, like, let's call it the perfect day. Let's call it the perfect day, right? So you wake up early, and you don't hit the snooze button, because the snooze button is the first battle of the day, and you don't want to lose it, right? It might seem insignificant, but get the first battle of the day, right? Get that one, and that is the snooze button, that evil snooze button. So you get up and you get ready, and then you make your bed. Why? Because it is one thing you do. It's in your control, and it's just a psychological thing. And you want, again, you're creating momentum in your day. Okay, so get some small little wins. Get into work. So now, let's say you've already planned out your day, or hopefully you have, and if you haven't, start planning that out. And take your biggest task, or maybe your most the task that you don't like, which might be making cold calls, business development, or whatever it is. and try to knock that out first. Because the great thing about that, that's the classic
the
Brian
Frog.
Tracy Eat the Frog. Yes, from Brian Tracy's famous book Eat the Frog, where he basically the whole idea is if you can in the morning, if you can eat a live frog that morning, swallow it down,
Which is originally Mark Twain, by the way. That was a
was
Mark
Mark
Twain.
Twain.
That was the origin of it. Yeah, but sorry.
Mark Twain
Or
and
was it
Frank
Yogi
Ryder, by the way.
Berra? Or Yogi Berra. It's one of the three.
But if you could swallow a live frog first thing in the morning, everything else the rest of the day seems a lot easier, right? By comparison. So do your hardest thing if it's possible in the morning when you get in, so you can knock it out, and that sets the tone for the rest of the day. So what you've done is you've created some small wins. You didn't hit the snooze button. You woke up clear-headed. You hit you made your bed. You got into work. Maybe you worked out. And then you did your hardest thing at the beginning of the day, so that is knocked out. And then you have the rest of the day. You've got great momentum behind you. Now, let's talk about the end of the day because that's just as important as what you do in the morning. So to make sure that you are coming in the next morning with a clear head, first things first, don't drink during the week. That's very hard for me because I love to have a couple beers after work. It's my signal to relax. But if I really need to make things happen with work, I'm actually not going to drink because I know even just a single beer or two will affect me the next day, and it affects your sleep. And try as much as you can to spend time with, put work away, spend time with your family, maybe work out, don't drink, and try to go to bed at an early hour. What I found is that if I can get in a full 8 hours of sleep, so it means trying to hit the sack around 9:30. I'm asleep by 10, so I can wake up by maybe 5 or 6. And then what I'm doing is I'm trying to eliminate all late night distractions. So TV off, read a book, listen to an audiobook. What I found really works very well at night is I have an eye mask, which has these Bluetooth speakers built in, and I can listen to I love reading science fiction. Adrian Tchaikovsky is one of my favorite authors. I'll listen to the audiobook and I fall asleep listening to that, and it's wonderful. It's relaxing. All the lights blocked out because I have an eye mask, and I'm sound asleep in 15 minutes, maybe 20 tops. And then I wake up and again, don't hit the snooze button. Make my bed. It's those little things that help you get through your day to day to day.
Could I ask you about that book thing? I love that idea. I keep the TV on the background, so it could be like shows I'm comfortable with. Are you able to listen to how long do you listen to the book? It's able to work. You're able to really absorb it and then kind of doze off to it and then come back up where you are. Like, I really kind of like that idea.
Yeah. So what I do, it's the company's called Manta, Manta, and so they make this. I got it for Christmas. It's amazing. It's an eye mask.
I'm
the cups. So all the lights blocked out, and I listen to Audible, and I set it to where it'll shut off automatically in an hour. So or an hour, 45 minutes, whatever. And then and so I don't read any nonfiction. It's just fiction because if I want to retain information, I'm going to do it in a different way because what will happen is I'll fall asleep and I'm kind of in and out a little bit, and eventually I fall asleep. So the next day I've got to go in, find out where I was at when I fell asleep, maybe back up a few minutes. So it might take me weeks to finish a book, but it's my escape time. It's me, eye mask, completely alone.
That.
Well, at least I feel like I've got my better half with me, but it really, really helps a lot just to settle down. Because the one thing that will hurt you is when you're just laying there in bed, you're thinking about payroll, you're thinking about your deals, you're thinking about the argument you had with your wife or your husband, or your kid and what they did at school, and then you sit there and you don't fall asleep till midnight, and you're worried, and you wake up the next day, you feel tired, you're not present, and that stress stays with you. And if you can find a way for me, it works to de-stress without alcohol. It's basically eye mask, Audible, drift to sleep, get a full 8 hours in, and I feel refreshed the next day. It does you a world of difference getting a full 8 with no alcohol in your system. And be completely relaxed. It is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So anyway, that's the morning and night routine that I would.
What if you have sleep apnea and you were a CPAP machine? This can't be good for your love life, David. I love it for what you're telling people.
Yeah.
But you don't look sexy wearing all this stuff at bed. Like, you're not being intimate.
You know what? I think it's sexy is having a successful business.
And being happy.
That's sexy.
Being happy is
No,
sexy.
but what's-
Being happy is sexy.
Yeah.
What I love
It
about
is.
what that whole
But it's true, it's
whole
true.
thing is, you're controlling the things you can control, right? And you feel better day after day, because one of the things I think when everything is seemingly going wrong is it just piles on, and you feel like you have no control, and it's just everything's coming at you and everything's just spinning, and that's when you spin towards destructive habits, because you're just like, I got nothing to hold on to, right? Whereas these habits, and like, I'm that make your bed in the morning person. I can't go anywhere without like making the bed every morning. It's just a thing
Were
for
you
me.
always like that? Me too. I was taught to do that.
Ever since I was a little kid, I was just, well, because also I didn't grow up with much, so we didn't have a lot of stuff, and so I always had felt like I don't have much. I want to at least take care of what I have. But that was a kind of a separate thought process. But I also used to come home from a long day of work, and I didn't want to see a freaking messy house. I wanted to come home. Back home from work to like my bedroom, like it was a hotel room, like ready to go. So like I make the bed every morning, but like that helps you feel like you're like getting somewhere each day, and it keeps pushing, and all that rest and that proper nutrition. And I'm not saying eat perfect, because none of us are gonna, but like getting the right types of nutrients. Like I found if I don't get enough protein, for example, like I feel like my cognitive ability is not as good. And maybe there's some just associating that, but if you're doing all that, you're putting yourself in the best position to have a good day, right? Like, so that if opportunity does come your way, you are like ready to move on it. And think about how quickly any of us feel when we get a win. Everything is just like great, right? You're sucking wind for a while, and then either like you make a hire or you'll land a couple of new clients, and all of a sudden it's like a whole new world, right? Mm-hmm. And everything's great. And like that, and then just doubling down on what you did to get there, and then realizing like, okay, I put myself to DSP's points, like I put myself in the best position possible to be able to act on these things. And I would add too, like, don't dwell on like on fucking Facebook and scroll through stuff, because you're going to find bad news wherever you go. And if you're already not feeling great and you just scroll through Facebook, like instead, when you wake up in the morning, instead of scrolling for like 15, 20 minutes and not really learning anything and not adding any value to yourself, fucking read the news, read a book, listen to a book. I used to feel like when I was in those slumps, if I didn't add some new information, I felt like a day was completely wasted. Right? What did I do today? I scrolled through Facebook and I watched a couple shows I've seen before. Like I didn't do anything new. I didn't add value to Chris. Right? So if you can like learn something, do something useful with that time, because otherwise, if you just scroll through, and even LinkedIn, if you could be scrolling through LinkedIn feeds and find a bunch of stuff to be depressed about, or you can get in an argument with somebody over some dumb bullshit that doesn't even matter, or you could just focus on prospecting, networking, etc. You know, there's always dumb stuff happening, but the second you get one glimmer of hope, or you land a deal, or you get a couple of meetings, just wow, everything's great again, right?
Yeah. And let me add on to both your comments. It's my wisdom at being almost 60. Is this supposed to be like this? Okay. This is life. This is what happened. It's supposed to happen. The good times aren't supposed to always happen. Like it's not always like that. And the best wisdom I heard from was amazing. And it was about resilience. And they said, every time in your life you conquer one situation, it makes you so much stronger. Because at a certain point, you realize, I got this. It's the same thing with depression. You can let yourself get down, but depression is a really weird thing for those of you who've been through it, right? Because you could be one day you're in a funk, and then the next day, like Chris said, you're out of it. So you know over time, this isn't real what I'm having right now. I'm going to be there tomorrow. It's in my head. I'm in control of that. Or it's not supposed to, it's normal. You don't get down by the downs, because that's where you learn. And that's not me being old. It is. Wisdom is wasted on the old.
Well, no, because the wisdom, I mean, that comes I said, I've been through like 3 recessions, et cetera. Like you see the ups and downs and you see the cycles, and that gives you some confidence, and you learn that like, it's not always gonna be like this. And you also learn over time that there's a million things going on in any given day. And this stuff that you're zeroing in on,
it's going to disappear. You got it. It's
nothing.
Fake. It's fake when you got it. And that's the key to life, I think. Once you realize I got this, like what's happening that you can't overcome? because you're not making call. If you say I'm doing everything, but you know you're not. So if you're honest with yourself and you just deal with it, you get stronger.
Right. And if you start getting incremental wins, even if they're forward progress in personal life or whatever, surprise, surprise, good things start to happen. Isn't that funny? Right, Neil? Like, all of a sudden now more good things happen. Like, it's not a coincidence, because you're focusing on the positive. Sorry.
Well, I think one thing that is very true what Chris said, focus on the positive ones. One thing you can do that really helps, and to be honest with you, I stopped doing, and actually talking now makes you realize they need to get back to it. So, obviously not all of us are perfect. And that comes down to planning and journaling. So I'm gonna see these two things. So I'll talk about planning and productivity in a second, but in terms of small wins, one thing is really valuable is if you every night, before you go to bed, journal just for a couple minutes, write down maybe what you learned that day, what's positive, what wins did you have, and if anything went bad, what, instead of saying this bad thing happened, instead saying I've learned a lesson. I've learned not to blank. Right now, I've learned to do this. Right, turn any negative into positive. Write it down. Write down your big 3 goals for the next day. And when you wake up in the morning after you make your bed, just up there right in front of you. So you see your win, you see your lesson, you know your 3 things you got to accomplish for that day. And the next night, do the exact same thing. Next night, do the exact same thing. Because the other thing that I think depresses people is when they don't see any progress. Every day bleeds into the next, every week bleeds into the next, and every month. And next thing you know, you feel like you're 48 or you're 50, and you feel like your life has gone nowhere. And a lot of it comes down to you don't see the progression that you're making. And so you can celebrate the small wins through journaling. And have it, again, right there in front of you. And there's plenty of really cool apps. Day One is one that I used to use. So that's the first thing is start journaling. You don't have to be a teenage girl to do it. You could be grown ass man, still journal and have it be useful.
Before you go to your next point, I just want to add something real quick to that point. That the recency effect of like good or bad in your head is going to have you focus on whatever just went wrong or whatever's like top of mind. You're not going to automatically remember all the incremental wins. So what DSP is saying is like a really big deal, because then you can battle that internal narrative. And instead of just being hung up on a recent loss, you can look back and be like, you know what, I did get a lot done this week. So you're documenting to like combat your own inner monologue. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, and so the second thing I wanted to mention is getting your work done. So again, we can talk about meditation and all that kind of stuff, and that stuff's fine, and having a good diet, not drink, and making your bed. But you know what really makes you happy? Getting your work done and seeing success. Selling, having a successful business, not feeling like you wasted your day. Because for a lot of folks, what you're doing is throughout your day, you're doing is you got these binoculars and you're looking for emergencies. That's why you're in your email all day long. Client emails you, respond to that, right? And then you're scanning. What else do I need to do? Oh, let me do that. And then nothing. I don't know. Let me go to Facebook and see what's going. Let me go to Twitter and to see what's going on with the Israeli Palestinian conflict, right? And so what you do is you're looking for things to do, and so I think. Obviously planning, and there's not going to be a lesson on planning necessarily. We could do a whole other show on that, even several shows on that. But if you want to feel like getting your work done, feel like you're actually moving forward, kind of like the eat the frog concept we talked about earlier. What I recommend for every week to do is if you really want to feel accomplished, designate maybe a couple hours in the morning where it is your deep work time. Similar to how many folks have been through training before, where we talk about golden hours or platinum hours, times when you're on the phone and do not disturb me. Well, if you set aside what we call deep work time, meaning in the morning, set aside a couple of hours where your family knows not to disturb you, your employees or your colleagues know not to disturb you unless there's a fire. And even then, make sure it's a raging fire before they come get you. And from there, and do your work. And for me personally, what really helps me do my work is listening to not regular music, anything without words. Anything with the words kind of screws me up. There's a app called Brain.fm, which I use, and it has classical music, acoustic music, electronic music, but music that's meant to help you focus. So I'll listen to this. I put this thing on here. When this is on, my family knows, do not disturb me. This is on, and I am working. And the cool thing is, if you do that by 10:30 or 11, you've got your major work done. Take it off and then do your other work. That's maybe more fun to do. But what I find is having that designated time where you completely just focus. And if you can the reason why people feel like shit is because they feel like they're stuck and they're confused. They don't know what's going on. They're not making progress, right? They're stuck, right? You never have to be stuck. There are always things you can do. You just need to figure out what those are, plan it, and figure out a way to force you into that lane to do those things, right? And the one thing I'll say, and this actually is a tip from Stephen Pressfield from the War of Art book that I mentioned earlier. A lot of people, he talks about writer's block because that book is meant more for writers, but again, it's applicable to anybody. Everybody's here has heard of writer's block, and he talks about how writer's block is what amateurs get. Professionals do not get writer's block, and here's what he means. Writer's block, and this goes with anything, whether it's making phone calls, making cold calls, sending out email campaigns, sending your canvas minutes, whatever it is. Writer's block, all that really is when you're staring at the screen is that you're waiting to be inspired before you write. Inspiration comes from perspiration. His advice is sit down at your designated time every morning, and rain or shine, come hell or high water, you start writing, and what you start writing will be shit. Just accept it. It's going to be trash. You're not going to use it, but just start writing.
Right.
And what'll
Pick up
happen?
the phone and make a call, even though you're not on, even though you don't feel like it. Get on the phone. Same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just
action.
do something. Action, because it's the action that creates the motivation. It's not the other way around.
Oh, yeah.
The way around.
But we wait for that motivation to take that action,
man.
which is
action, activity, right?
And you know what? You could do that trick with the phone calls where just like if you just need to get warmed up, call some people you already know. Call some past clients. Call some like a couple other recruiters you know. Just get on the phone.
Yeah.
Or send some LinkedIn messages, whatever you're choosing. You just
who's an expert on this, and maybe it's someone that we could talk more about this, and we can kind of pick the topic. And I'm curious. So what I was sharing behind the scenes, let me segue a little bit. I got a call after this. I made a cold call to a legend in the industry to come to our show. LinkedIn in-mail to Steve Finkel. Now, he and I have been going back and forth, and who knows him? Steve Finkel, we're looking for him to be on our show. He's a legendary author.
And actually, we actually may have him on the show. Have you talked about a date yet, Neil?
No.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Oh, that's weird.
Oh, there we go. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
We can hear you now.
He's not watching now, but I talked to him at 2:00. So I'm going to hopefully convince him. He's wants to do 2 shows over the internet. He's got one he's in talks to, and he's a great guy. He's going to add so much of this. He's got a followership on his newsletter of like 40,000 recruiters.
Does he still? I'd love to see him on video because I'd love to know if he still has the Dabney Coleman look going or if that's just an outdated show, because that's fantastic.
From 9 to 5, Dabney Coleman?
Yeah.
He was such a great
he's got the same mustache as my dad. My dad's been rocking that mustache ever since I was a little kid. Still rocking it to this day. Still bushy, still glorious. That glorious little lip mane. But I'll tell you what. But beyond that, though, Steve is a legend in the industry. In fact, when I was first in the business with MRI back in 2000, when I did my training, it was Steve Finkel, and it was also Tony Byrne was another one. So the 30 steps in the placement process, and every VHS tape, you had as one tape per step.
I loved it. That was my Bible. That one, David. That inspired me to be a trainer. Anthony Burns one.
And of course Steve's breakthrough recruiting I mean, it's funny because even in the Facebook group, in our Facebook group here, both yours and mine, when somebody gets the book, they post a picture. I mean, I've got just in the last few months, there've been about at least a half dozen, 8, 10, whatever pictures of breakthrough recruiting that people have posted up, at least in my group, and I'm sure in yours as well. And so it's pretty amazing. So hopefully we'll get him on the show, and he'll I'm sure we'll have
I
some.
would, yeah.
Some
So I'm excited to just talk to him, and I'll send his regards. I won't tell him that there's literally tens of viewers on our show. No, we're kidding. We do get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of you on our different channels. So we're being funny when we say the single, but we'll at least embellish a little bit to Steve Finkel.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I just my only one thing I want to say, my only last tidbit I want to get that I was thinking early on that I want to forget since we're getting close on time, that I think really helps. A lot of people can also relate to this. And a lot of people, they're in their own mindset, they start, maybe you've got a shopping addiction, you're on Amazon, whatever. You're, even if you don't, I saw this most amazing podcast. It was a TED Talk. Changed my life like a decade ago. And it's like, money can't buy you happiness is a bunch of crap. Money can buy you happiness was the premise. You're just spending it wrong. Stop spending it on yourself. Do something for others. It doesn't have to be money. It could be your human capital. Do something for other people. It's the most, listen, try it. Do something. It could be a little thing. Do something, a favor, just out of the blue. You're going to feel like a million, but it will push you out of it every time. It's the most amazing life advice I can give you.
And I think what happens there, besides like the altruistic benefits, is you are not focusing on your stuff. You're externally focused. So if you're trying to help somebody out or support something, you are not busy in your own head thinking about you.
You're thinking about good. It buys you so much happiness. What does a nice lunch at a restaurant do for you? It's over. You don't get much joy from that, is the point. You do. It feels nice. You do that. Spend that same money, as an example, on someone that really, like, oh my God, you're going to be in the best mood all day. You can buy happiness is his point. And it doesn't have to be money, right? Like,
that's a good point.
It can be good. It'd be a good feeling. It could be like value. And in fact, I even say this in terms of when you message clients and candidates, people always talk about adding value. And sometimes you add value all over somebody, and it's just they're getting value all over the place. But one piece of value that everybody loves is a smile, making them feel good. And sometimes even in a message, whether you use a joke or they get them to crack a smile, that's actually value in and of itself. And so imagine if you're at the Circle K or 7-Eleven, at the grocery store, what have you, and you're in line and the cashier says, "Hi, how are you?" And he's like, "Good, how are you?" "I'm good." It's just it's robotic. You don't put any thought behind it, as opposed to saying, "How are you doing?" He's like, "You know what? I'm doing majestic today. Excellent. How are you doing, man? How's your weekend?" Like, get them out of the robotic mental state, and you'll force yourself out of your robotic mental state. You give somebody a smile, you give yourself a smile. Those little things add up. One thing that I did to get over my social anxiety, and granted, this is kind of a separate topic, but it's tangential and it's related. One of the things I did to get rid of my social anxiety was I would go to the mall. And I don't know if you could do this nowadays necessarily, especially at my age, because that'd be creepy. But what I would do is I would go and start giving people high fives. People I didn't know. I walk up, I'm like, "Hey, what's up? High five." And people would naturally, if you're confident enough, they'll give you a high five and they will smile, and you've given them a story. Do 10 of those and you'll be riding high the rest of the day. You will feel
do 20 of those and you'll be in jail.
And you'll be good. Yeah. And make sure they're over 18 and make sure you yourself are not over 30, because that'll be creepy. But
make sure you get consent.
Make sure you get consent. Yeah, that's fill out the form, please. But it's those little things that get you out of your comfort zone. And what it does, it gives you like an endorphin rush. Yeah. It's actually a high. And when you and one interesting thing that I've done this in years, but I used to try to do one thing out of my comfort zone every day, whether it was, it could be that or anything else. And when you do that uncomfortable thing, it gives you that endorphin rush. And that's a great way just to, it's a good natural high. It's better than alcohol. And you do that every single day, you'll start seeing those returns. You'll start having a better mental state, even when things are going bad.
Well, the three of us are experiencing that right now with the feedback and what we're feeling that you guys are feeling on the show. And it kind of reminds I don't know if you've ever seen on the Oprah Winfrey Network, she has Super Soul Sunday. It kind of feels like that. We get inspired by giving, and you guys are doing that. So honestly, we do need to have a level of this for the show. We'll talk about this offline, but this inspiring kind of stuff, we have endless, these things. I think we make a segment of this each show because it resonates with all of us and inspires us.
I think I have two things I want to cover too to make sure I didn't forget before we run out of time that I found to be helpful for me. You know how, especially if you're solo, there's all these things that you want to do like on your business, right? But if you're busy, like what are you focused on? You're focused on, closing deals, talking to candidates, submitting all of like the closest to the dollar activities, right? And you get busy and you're like, oh, I would like to like, create some content. I would like to like think about my marketing strategy. I would like to think about like, scheduling some speaking engagements or other things, right, that will have long-term value. I have found personally that I have sometimes squandered the downtimes and not done that stuff. Like, and then what would happen is I'd like get busy again. And I'm like, you know what, when I had that slow month, I probably should have done a bunch of articles or made a bunch of content or looked around for places I could do speaking or like whatever you're trying to do that's like that is valuable, that you need to do for your recruiting business that isn't like immediately making you money. Use those times because that'll also give you something to focus on. I'm telling you, when it picks back up again, which it will, you'll be kicking yourself because you didn't, because you had the time then you could focus on those things. Mm-hmm. So that's one of them that I just found cycles where I would be like, you know what, I could have gotten a lot done then, and now I'm busy again and I don't have time to do it. Although I don't have time is not a good excuse. I suppose you can make the time. And then I guess the other big thing that has helped me after various cycles is don't blow all your money. This is a real thing for recruiters. I burn through
that mindset tip ever. Don't blow your money.
Yeah, and I'm saying like this won't help you when you're in the slump, but just remember when times are good and you are flush, that listen, it comes and goes. And I will tell you that when the road gets bumpy again, if you have better shocks, it's not so bad, or whatever horrible analogy or metaphor I'm trying to go for there. But I guess my point is like we as recruiters, like we're a lot of times we're like eating what we kill constantly, and we're the money's going out as fast as it's coming in. And just from a personal perspective, like I'm not saying you got to be cheap, I'm not saying whatever, but I'm just saying, tuck a little extra away for your reserves. And then when you hit a slump, you can attack things with a clear head. I have attacked things with a holy shit, I got to close this deal or I'm not going to be able to keep my power on mentality. And I've also had, okay, this is a cycle, because I had money in the bank and I had and I was like, okay, not feeling the immediate pressure. I have a clear head. I can attack this with like, now also you're getting like the rest and stuff like that DSP was talking about. And then it's a lot easier to dig yourself out of that hole if you're not feeling that pressure.
So that by the way is a good piece of advice that a dad would give, and it's very true. Don't blow
your sound like a dad when they do that.
Which dad advice.
I'm going to tell my son that too. Save your pennies.
It's also advice that you can tell a million times. You got to just do it on your own and blow the money and learn the hard way.
We all had to.
My dad.
Everyone.
So here's one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was actually from my father. My dad. This is dad advice that was given to me back in 2010, when in the recession I lost my business at the time, and I also went through a really nasty divorce. We're talking you want to talk about nasty. It was nasty. And when you're going through that, you want to everybody you talk to, you want to bend their ear with their story. You want to tell them what's going on, what happened, and all that, and they're just listening to you. And you tell the same story over and over and over and over again, where the story is, right? Whether it be a relationship or anything else, right? And so I remember very clearly, I was on the phone with my father, and I started telling him the story. And he says, Dave, because he calls me Dave, not David. He's like, Dave, hold up there a second. Do you know where your next deal's coming from? And I said, no. He said, okay, you go find out where your next deal's coming from. And when you figure that out, then you call me and I'll be happy to listen to your story. Until then, I don't want to hear it. And that's dad advice. But you know what? That was the most, that right there, I still remember to this day, that was when I focused back on my business and got my life back on track, because he embarrassed me.
Refocused you.
He refocused me because and it embarrassed me, but it was really important. I think sometimes we need to either give ourselves that tough talk, or maybe rely on your wife or your husband or your father or whoever it is, maybe a confidant or your best friend, and maybe ask them to be a bit hard on you, get them to drive you to where you need to be, because sometimes it's really hard to do it yourself, especially when you're stuck in this sort of cycle of fear or cycle of despair, and you want to just tell the story over and over. It's not going to help you. Right. That is, and so it's definitely not mom advice for sure. That is 100%
So David,
dad
I'm
advice.
going to have to bow out of this if we want to announce. I got to end and I got to run. I got to talk to Steve. I want to talk about the show. We have some good hosts that are booked coming up. We want to fill them in. And of course, my quick plug is, if you want to sell yourself out of this, you got to do temporary business. Download our ebook on mastering staffing by the book, backofficenow.com/staffing.
There you go.
So David,
And
we got
yeah, I think that's it,
Mina.
actually. So Neil, actually, yeah, Ben Mina coming in is going to be on our show as well here in a few weeks. Although next week we don't have a guest, but you know what? It might actually do maybe a part 2, because this has been a pretty good show so far. Had a lot of interaction. And I think actually next show we can talk about productivity, because one of the best ways to get out of a slump and to get your mindset right is to feel as if you're moving forward and being productive. Maybe next show we can talk about productivity, because that goes hand in hand with mindset, in my opinion, hand in hand.
I love it. And you know what Steve Finkel's going to want to talk about? And someone asked, there was a question, someone asking maybe he's still using a phone book, LOL. That's funny that you say that. I'm sure he has, and I'm not making fun, but because he's got a MindSpring email. All right. I tried to text him. He doesn't do text. He no Calendly. He's old school. He took off so what he's bringing is, it's what's old is new again. It's perfect timing for him, because all the automation and everything, everyone's doing it. Now the playing field's leveled, and now relationships, his wisdom's brilliant. I think it's perfect time for him to reach new audiences that he's trying to do. So
people haven't changed. The modes have changed. The people haven't changed.
That's right.
100%, guys.
Stuff, right? Breakthrough. It's still dead on, man. It's dead on. His timeless, that stuff. Same with Tony Burns, right? And I got to run, but like that 20 steps to placement process for any recruiter, it's still the same. Debriefing, he nailed it, right, dude? I think he did.
Oh yeah.
Right, anyway,
it's funny. But he's passed away. God rest his soul. I know he went out hard, by the way. If everybody knows the story behind how that whole deal went out. But anyway, I won't get into the here live on the air.
Offline.
Oh, I'll tell you offline. Yeah. He went out hard. He went out partying. Anyway, he went out like a real recruiter. But that said, we'll talk about that offline, guys. Great show. I guess we'll wrap here. I know, Neil, you got to go. You got to talk to Steve. So guys, do this. If you're watching the show again, make sure to hit comment, replay, give us some likes, give us some likes. Please share the show with your friends. If everybody shared the show, would be huge. And so we're growing every week, but we can always use more growth. That said, next week we'll talk about productivity. And then I think the week after that, we have a few other guests lined up. Ben Mina being one. The owners of Empower Associates are also going to be on as well. And then hopefully Steve Finkel. All right, guys, that's it.
All right.
Hopefully it helps everybody. Peace out.
All right.